In this video I will give you every piece of information you need to know to understand the circle of fifth. Most advice I hear is about learning some quick fixes you forget after one day, but I will explain it to you so you will understand it once and for all. The circle of fifth is a powerful tool that helps us understand the relationships between different musical keys. In simple terms, the closer two keys in the circle, the easier you can go from one to the other. By the end of the video you will understand exactly why. First of all, let's talk about scales. A scale is just a written form of the notes used in a specific key. In total, a scale has 8 notes, while the first and the last one are the same. The latter is just an octave higher. Every scale has its unique syntax. This just means every scale looks different, but they all sound the same if we just focus on the major scale. Why? The easiest way how to understand this is by looking at piano keys. All the white keys are the notes without accidentals. As you might know, in total we have 12 notes. Some of them have the same name. For example, an A flat is the same as a G sharp. From every note on the keys, when you go up, so you would technically add a sharp, you go up one semitone. And that's where the problem is. Keys are not always the same. Between the E and the F and the B and the C, there are no black keys. So these are the only notes where you just have a semitone. Between G and A is a whole tone, between A and B as well, but not between B and C. This is very important to know to understand scales and harmonies. Let's now look at the C major scale. As you can see, there are no accidentals, but there is a very specific way of organization. Between step 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, there's always a whole tone, and between 3 and 4 is a semitone. The same is for the second part of the scale. From 4 to 5 and from 5 to 6 are whole tones, and from 7 to 8 is a semitone. And this structure is true for every single major scale, without exception. Also very important to know, there's just one major scale that has no accidentals, and that's C major. There's just one key signature for every amount of accidentals. So there's just one major key signature with 3 flats, for example, or one with 4 sharps. Why do we actually have to use flats and sharps? Let's say we would start C major from D. Why shouldn't it work? Because the semitones in the scale change their place. Now, they are not between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. They are between 2 and 3 and 6 and 7. That's why we have to add accidentals to counteract the nature of our notation. Keep in mind, D major starts always on D, which also holds for every other key, so E flat starts on E flat and G major starts on G. Now that you know where the semitones have to be in the scale, you pretty much don't have to learn the different amount of accidentals by heart, because you can use your brain. Not saying that you shouldn't know how many accidentals a specific key signature has, but you don't have to learn some stupid trick, you can just understand it. So D major. We know the semitones are between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. So what do we have to change? Let's start at the beginning because we can't change the D. Is D to E a whole tone? Yes it is. Is E to F a whole tone? No. So we put a sharp in front of the F, now it's a whole tone. F sharp to G, is this a whole tone? No, it's a semitone, but because this is scale degree 3 to 4, it should be a semitone, so it's right. G to A is a whole tone, A to B as well. B to C is again a semitone that should be a whole tone, so we add a sharp in front of the C. We get C sharp, so B and C sharp is a whole tone. C sharp and D is a semitone, and we got D major. As you can see now, D major has 2 sharps, namely F sharp and C sharp. Let's do the same for a difficult key like F sharp. Whole tone over F sharp is G sharp, whole tone again is the A sharp, semitone over A sharp is B, whole tone is a C sharp, then D sharp, then E sharp. I know E sharp is a bit weird, but you need it to get the semitone between E sharp and F sharp, and we're done. One quick thing, a B sharp is technically the same as a C. A C flat is nothing else than a B. Same for E sharp, it's basically F, and vice versa, F flat is E. Attention, this just works for B and C and E and F, because there is no black key between them. So they are already a semitone apart from each other. Now let's go back to the circle of fifth. In the outer circle you see all the major harmonies, and in the inner circle the minor ones. You can see A minor has the same keys as C major. And there's a super simple trick how you can go from major to minor and from minor to major. If we got C major and we just start the scale from the 6th step of the scale with the same accidentals, we get A minor. So it's basically C major but starts from A. Vice versa, if we got A minor and want to find the major key that has no accidentals, we just look at the 3rd note of the scale. As you see, it is C. So we know C major has no accidentals. Just keep in mind when you do this, the 6th from the major scale and the 3rd of the minor scale must be considered together with their accidentals. For example, if we got C minor, the 3rd is E flat, not just E. Same the other way around. There's just one more thing that is important to understand why the circle of fifth is useful, and that is that all scales are related to each other in fifth. In easy terms, when you go from 1 flat to 2 flats, you take the key that is a perfect fifth lower. Exactly a perfect fifth lower. So if you have F flat, with 1 flat and you go down a perfect fifth, you arrive at B flat, which has exactly 2 flats. If you go down again a fifth, you got 3 flats and E flat major. If you want to go clockwise, you just go up a fifth. So from 0 keys, C major to 1 sharp, you go from C a perfect fifth up to G major and you got 1 sharp. Because the circle of fifth is a circle, you can go in every direction and you can go everywhere no matter where you start. At the bottom, the flats and sharps meet each other at G flat or F sharp, which is technically the same, because if you look at piano keys again, if you have a G and go 1 semitone down, it's the same as if you would have an F and you would go a semitone up. So if you want to go from D flat major to B major, you could go to G flat major, which is basically F sharp major, and from there to B major. Looks strange going from flats to sharps, but it doesn't sound weird. The question remains, why is the circle of fifth important? I basically mentioned it at the beginning. The circle of fifth shows us how close 2 keys are to each other and what that means. For example, if we take E flat major. The most common chords in E flat major are the tonic, obviously, the subdominant, the dominant, and probably the tonic parallel. Where do we find them? The subdominant is the fifth underneath the tonic. As you remember, all the keys are fifth apart from each other, so the subdominant is the key underneath E flat, namely A flat. The dominant is the fifth in the other direction, so B flat. And the parallel is C minor, so the 6th scale degree, which has the same keys as E flat, but the root note is C. As you can see now, these chords are very close to each other. And all of this is basically uninteresting. They are close to each other, who cares? But what happens if the composer chooses to go from here to here? That makes no sense, or does it? Here's an example from Liszt's B minor sonata where he went from E minor to B flat major. Doesn't seem too far, but considered it's a tritone from E to B flat, it's pretty far. Does it sound awesome or freaking incredible? The tritone is the furthest you can go from one note to another. You could argue that 6 semitones is not that far away. You could also go a 7th, which is 11 semitones, but the major 7th is just like a semitone in the other direction, so it's kinda close. In a melody, the 7th is super powerful and very far away, but not if you talk about harmonies, because harmony changes always seek the closest way to the next note. So if you would have an ensemble piece, most players would just have to go to the next semitone or whole tone, otherwise it would be too jumpy. And maybe you still ask yourself, why should I know this? If you see a composer always staying, let's say here, and then suddenly he goes there, there's probably something important in the music. And if you recognize patterns changing over time, especially if it's very sudden, you know that you have to make a very strong emotional impact. There's probably something the composer wanted to say at that specific part. And maybe it's even the emotional climax. So knowing the circle of fifth helps understanding interpretation. And also from a macroformal perspective, fancy word for if you look at the bigger parts of a piece, which keys were used where. If you start in C major and there's a part in F sharp major, which is basically the furthest away you could go from C major, you know that whatever happened in the music at the beginning, something changed. To make it easier to understand, look at the Hobbit. He started as a very comfortable being, then he had to seek this adventure and it changed him. The person he became during his journey is not the person from the beginning. For the same reasons, an F sharp will sound different from a C major beginning because something changed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you probably also enjoyed this video as well, in which I deconstructed the most controversial chord in music history of all time. Please check it out. Thanks for watching, and we see each other in the next one.